Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome to Returning Home. This is your host, Natalie Sapinski. I meant to talk to you about this last week, so I'm just going to do it now. I just read this book. It's by Philip Roth, such a great writer, and it's called Indignation. It's one of his lesser-known novels, and I read it in one sitting, and it's about America in the 1950s, 1951, about a boy from Newark, New Jersey, Newark, you say, and he's a Jewish boy, and he goes off to college after doing 1 year at a local community college where everyone's the same and goes to the college and then sleeps at home. I think you call that a commuter college. But he can't stand his parents. His dad's getting on his nerves, even though they're very close. And his dad's a butcher. And he goes into the detail of life, Jewish life at that time. He's such a great writer. And I'll tell you why I'm telling you about this. He goes to get away from his father, who's becoming like too protective. And he goes off to the Midwest, to a college in Ohio, a liberal arts college, where there are very few Jews. And he experiences life to be a minority. And he had been living with a Jewish life, not religious, but culturally Jewish life. His father was actually a kosher butcher. So he leaves the city, goes to the country, goes to the middle of the country, and he's with these waspy boys, and there's only, one Jewish fraternity, and he experiences life as a minority, and everything he talks about and everything he goes through on a college campus, a liberal arts college campus, is so familiar to me because I grew up, as many of you know, in Wilmington, Delaware, not a very strong Jewish population. And being different and being a minority was part of my makeup. And that's how I was raised. And that's what I knew. I'm not saying that I liked it, but that's what I knew. And that's probably why one of the reasons I moved to Israel. I know it's one of the reasons I moved to Israel, because my first time here, I felt different. I felt part of things, part of the majority. You could be Jewish. You can be out about it. You don't have to be quiet about it. I loved it. And all of you listening, please remember that coming into Israel it is coming home. It's where you belong. And I hope more and more of you do come and join those Nefesh B'Nefesh flights and get over here, because you belong here. All right, we have a great show for you. Stick around.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Welcome back to Returning Home. I'm your host, Natalie Sapinski. Joining us today is a new friend of mine. Her name is Gilia Posner. She is a real estate agent. She runs a company, a business called Dwellings in Jerusalem. She made Aliyah in 2006 as a single woman, 35 years old, and she was living at the time in the Upper West Side of New York, which is, a great place to be single. And I welcome you, Gilia. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I want to just jump right in because, you've been here a long time, about as long as me, but, you came single. You might consider that an older single. I love that. I love it because I know you have a great story of how you met your husband and grew a family. But before we get there, why back then, 15 years ago, when there wasn't this anti-Semitism and these horrible politics, why did you want to come? Why did you come? You were, it sounds to me, anyone living in New York single, that's like the life.
Well, it was, definitely. That being said, I actually grew up in Israel, and I spent my formative years here. in elementary school. So Israel was a familiar place to me, and I still have family here. My sister has also been living here, and it just felt like the right place to be. I've always connected to living in Israel, and that I feel it is the homeland for the Jewish people.
Okay. I forgot about that part. So when you say you grew up here, how many years did you spend here? You told me your parents made Aliyah when you were a little child.
Yeah, when I was in grade school, when I was 7, and we lived in Beersheba, which has changed a lot since then. But it really bonded me to the land, to the Israeli way of life, and I never forgot that.
So what happened? They left?
It wasn't quite working out for us in Beersheba.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps if we had lived in Jerusalem, I think the experience would have been much more positive.
Yeah. Yeah, you change your place, you change your luck, for sure. Okay.
For sure.
Okay. So you were, but you were, I can't say you were Israeli. You're an American. You're from America. You said a couple of years abroad, but then you are living a single life in New York City. What happened was it something that made you get up and go or not?
There was, at the time, I think Nefesh B'Nefesh was really, I think they were in their beginning, and they were doing a great deal of marketing, and it worked on me. First of all, they were offering incentives, financial packages, and I saw it not as only an opportunity to get an assistance that I could need in getting established, but in making a fresh start. And I felt that Israel could hopefully give me that fresh start, which it did. I really feel that my story is an inspiration in many ways.
Okay, good. Let's jump into that. You're 35. Sure. I guess you didn't have a boyfriend, and I guess you didn't have the dream job, because you got up and left.
That's right. Okay. Didn't have either one of those. So it was definitely easy for me to reinvent. It was an opportunity to reinvent my life.
All right.
And that's what I did.
Great. So walk us through it. You met with Nefesh B'Nefesh. You filled out the application. Back then it was like 3 pages, nothing, right? And
actually, it's funny. I remember that I got cold feet because I got approved for a December flight, and now I remember that I got cold feet and ended up backing out. Oh. And then I did, yeah. And then I rethought it, and I was able to come the following summer.
Wow, I never heard of that. Okay, that's a good story, because I wonder if that happens to others. It must.
Look, it's a big move. Yeah. You're leaving everything that's comfortable, and certainly it's easier in many ways, to live in the States. I think earnings are higher for sure, although that's changed for me too, and it's more comfortable there.
Look,
and if you're not nowadays, it's different. Nowadays it's different for sure.
Okay, but first of all, no. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to tell you why I'm saying no. It's not true that it's no more comfortable there. You're comfortable with what you're familiar with, and if you're familiar with one kind of life, then you're comfortable. All right. Now you're comfortable here, right? Now you're comfortable here.
I think what I meant when I said comfortable was more of a material perspective.
Right. Okay. What I was going to just jump in and share with you, when we were making Aliyah, my husband told me we had to actually rent a van and a driver. We had 2 little babies, car seats and all that, and we had to have someone drive us. And he said, my husband told me later, when we were backing out of the driveway, he thought to himself, what are we doing? He never told me that. He told me years later. So yeah, I think people probably do get cold feet. They get scared. They get nervous. They look around them like, what are we doing? You're changing your whole life. Okay. So you came over single, and let's hear the story. The work story and the love story.
Yes, the love story.
Let's hear them both.
Yeah. Well, I feel I was very blessed that I I'm now married to a man that I met just a few months after making Aliyah. And the Aliyah was bumpy. It was a bumpy landing, which I understand happens to a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons, a main reason why I really enjoy the work that I do is to help people, especially Olim, avoid that.
Okay.
If it's possible to avoid a bumpy landing, then, yeah.
Right. Explain bumpy. Explain bumpy.
Bumpy, let's see, signing on an apartment unseen. I did that. And coming to a place and then realizing that it was a mistake. Having to extract yourself from that situation. It's just unnecessary stress. It's stressful enough to be in a new country and having to adjust, and acclimate without one's living experience being having unanticipated stressors.
Okay, correct. And we all have stories of things that happen. And, here landlords have all the rights and the tenants have none. And people, or even I see on the different chats I'm on, do I have to give 12 checks for the year in advance? Is that normal? All these kind of things happen. And when you're by yourself, a single woman, it stinks. That is hard. And you apparently, learned a lot from that because today you're in real estate. And
that's right.
Helping people avoid those pitfalls. And it's so great to have people like you helping because, years ago.
Well, I was there. I was there firsthand, and I know what it's like. And so, and just having that extra support, I think, is really, really, makes a difference. And people have thanked me, so much for doing that. It's
like a matter of trust also. Like when you come over here, and I'm not talking about people who have friends and family. I'm talking about people who don't have friends and family. Who do you trust? You're going to trust your real estate agent? You're going to trust this guy because someone told him, oh, he speaks English? It's not enough. That's not something to go on. Someone speaking English or someone being, referred. It's not always enough. It's not always enough. We're strangers here. But that is changing. That is changing because more and more Olim are coming. Tell us, if you can, before we finish this segment, we have about 3 minutes, how you met your husband.
Well, that's magical. I was trying everything, of course, all the online dating sites and matchmakers and going to friends and asking if you know anyone who knows someone and all the usual routes and nothing was working. And I met him in the best of all possible ways, and that was naturally, I guess, quote unquote. It was there was an event that hasn't happened for quite some time. It was called the Jerusalem Ball, and maybe with this interview it will help bring it back to life. But it was a great event. It was a fancy evening outing for singles. We get a chance to dress up. You have to pay for a ticket, and it's catered, and there's live music. So I heard about this event, the Jerusalem Ball, and I went to get my ticket. And I met with the event organizer at a cafe in Baca, which happens to be around the corner from where we live today. And that's where I met him. He was hanging out with her because they're friends. And I think it was love at first sight.
Yeah. Well, what happened? He said, hi, how are you? Looked at you. What, took your hand?
I think it really was. What's that movie with the Transylvania movie where they say they get this kind of magic feeling? Anyway, I can't think of it right now. But it definitely was there for me. He asked me afterwards, he called me, he got my number, and asked if, since I was going to the ball by myself, if we could go together. Nice. And he picked me up later that evening, and we went, and the rest is history.
Oh, that is so great. That's just so simple. That's how it needs to be. And
and by the way, I also want to mention that he himself was an older single, 39, or 40, 39, yeah, and hadn't been married, just like me, and I feel like we like to retell the story to a lot of the singles that we meet who are, getting worried and nervous, and say, it can happen because it happened to us. Right.
In the simplest way. That's a simple way,
Yeah.
like actual face-to-face transaction. Oh, he happened to be there, looked at me, looked at him, called you up. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. Enough with the computer dating. Oh, that's so sad.
Also, his first name happens to be Israel. So I like telling people I made Aliyah to Israel.
And then
and thank God we have 3 children.
Right. Stay with us. We're going to be back after these messages. Everyone hang around. We're going to hear the rest.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome back to Returning Home. I'm your host, Natalie Sapinski. We're continuing with Gilia Posner from Dwellings in Jerusalem. She just told us her, the beginning, the one part of her Aliyah story, her love story, how she met her husband. Very nice, the old-fashioned way. Actually met him buying a ticket to a ball. He called her up and took her, and happy ever after. Very nice. Okay, let's get down to the career section, because I found this story very nice as well. Tell me, what did you do when you landed? Did you have a job? Did you have a career already? Were you nervous about that? Did you go to a headhunter? What'd you do?
Well, the nice thing that made it easier at that time was a company by the name of IDT, which pretty much, you had to have an interview, of course, but didn't, but it pretty much guaranteed new olim a job, and I loved many things about it. First of all, the hours, which are based on U.S. hours, so it was from 4 p.m. until midnight. And as a single, obviously that wasn't a problem for me. Plus, if I made sure to not stay awake for the rest of the night, then I could wake up at 9 or 10 the next morning, and I'd have the whole day to do things.
Right.
Learn the lay of the land, and meet people, go places. Yeah.
Right.
So this job, it was they had different projects in telemarketing. And I discovered that I was really good at it. It was something that I didn't know, that I kind of had up my sleeve. So very shortly into my time there, I was promoted to manager, group leader, and it kind of came effortlessly to me, and it was really fun. We had to basically get a few minutes in which to convince someone, a stranger, to either take a loan, or I'm not even sure what it was. And people would stop what they were doing when I got on the call, and everyone would come around me and plug in so they could hear me how I closed the deal in a matter of minutes. And it was just it was kind of a high. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And then, then the company experienced some trouble. I'm not even sure today how. If they're still around, I think they are, but in a much more modest capacity. So what did you do? What
was my job there?
No, I mean,
or what did I do when they? Well, actually, while I was still working there, I had gotten married and was expecting my first child, and so I still worked there for that duration, the first year of my marriage, and. In fact, I remember the leaders they would get worried, because there I am, like really pregnant, and I'm, on a sales call, and it's very stressful. They wanted to make sure everything, but it was fine. Right. And I basically left. I left the company when I had my first child, and I expected to go back. That was my plan. 3 months later, after maternity leave, I expected to go back, but then discovered the doors had been closed. Mm-hmm. So. At that point, I, just had to reassess, what to do, what kind of work to do, and it took some time, but it kind of came on me that real estate could be a good a good opportunity. I could use my sales skills and my people skills. And so I started building my business.
Well, did you take a course or something?
There was a course, and I was able to get a discount on it as a new immigrant. So I learned the ropes. It wasn't easy. It was all in Hebrew. And there was a test that had to be taken at the end. But I did it.
Like a real estate
And I got
course.
my license. Yeah.
Okay.
And the rest was, piece by piece. And I'm still putting the puzzle together, but thank God it's working really well.
That's amazing. So you built yourself a business.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so it's called Dwellings. It's called Dwellings in Jerusalem. I guess you're on Facebook, right?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm working on getting a page just with my name, because I'm finding that the title Dwellings in Jerusalem can be kind of a tongue twister for Israelis and also for English speakers. So I'm trying to promote myself now more just with my name, with Gilia Posner.
Okay. So you, I guess, concentrate on the neighborhoods in and around Jerusalem. Yeah?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you see the trend happening now? All these Olim coming. Are families moving to Jerusalem? I mean, it's expensive there.
It's expensive, but Jerusalem is, I think, a place where everyone wants to be. And whoever can afford it, they choose to be here, even though it doesn't have the ocean and doesn't have, that it still is the eternal city, and it draws people all the time from every part of the world.
Right. This is not just my opinion and my what I notice, but for years I've read people complaining about the darkened buildings in Jerusalem at night because all the good real estate is owned by people who live abroad. And it's not fair, and it drives the price up. Now, I hear you coming and say, well, it's the eternal city, and the prices are always going to be high. And it's, there's good and bad in that.
Right.
It's
everyone deserves, every Jewish person deserves to have a home in Jerusalem. And I know there have been some projects that have come up. In fact, right behind my project where I live in North Talpiot, which is between Baca and Arnona. And a project came up called Arnona Dreams, which enabled a lot of families. Of all the 300 units, I think they had 80 that were designated for lower income as a raffle. And I think you see more of that coming up. And it should be like that. It shouldn't be that to live in a safe, nice neighborhood that you have to spend a fortune.
Right. I don't know any families. You're the first person I've ever met with young children. You have young children, correct? They're like grade school?
I do. 3 of them, yep.
Yeah, you're the first person I've ever met who lives in Jerusalem with young children. But, I don't live there. But your neighborhoods and the neighborhoods there are active. They must be. There are schools, there are ganim. I see them. So it's not like you can't afford to live in Jerusalem. People are doing it, right?
There are people doing it. They find ways. I think there's more help available now too for families and that.
Okay, so what do you?
Go ahead.
What I was going to ask you, what do you advise people who are looking for more of a like a neighborhood, more of a suburban type of area? Would you suggest like remote? Would you suggest Har Homa? Do you have access to those places? Are you able to help in those neighborhoods?
I do. I mean, again, most of my work is in the main neighborhoods that most Anglos want to live in, which would include Rehavia, Talbia, Baca, the German colony, city center, and now it's also coming into Arnona. That being said, I have a wide reach network of colleagues that I can work with and that could have opportunities in the periphery that would include Har Nof or Armon HaNatziv. And I really do believe there's a home for everyone in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I was going to ask you also the older Americans, older North Americans, English speakers who come here and they're alone. I know you found a friend of mine an apartment, and she's an older woman alone, and you can find her in a great place. And there are a lot of women and men, but more women, I think, than men, who do come here alone, and they want to be where they can walk around, and they need to be like in the city. And are there options for them? Yes, there are. And I like to see my job not as just presenting an address, but really from start to finish, understanding the person's needs. If they want community, if they need community, schools, synagogues, what they need to have to complete the whole picture, and to help them find a place based on all those requirements. Yeah, and not to have to compromise. Right, and that's what every real estate agent should do. I mean, that's what you do. You're doing what you love, and you should do it the right way. Right? Yes. Yeah. I don't know if everyone does. Some of them are pushy. It's true. I think that not everyone in my profession shines. Unfortunately, I've spoken to a lot of clients who've had some really, really bad experiences, and I hope that by working with me, that can change the picture. Yeah. Do you have any advice? We have a minute left. Do you have any advice to give our listeners? Most of our listeners are not in Israel. They are contemplating Aliyah. What advice do you have for them, if any, about moving here? About moving here, that it's become much easier. It's become so much easier to live here. And, that's easy for you to say because you know the difference, but they don't. If people are still, look, where are they all, right? Where are they? They're not rushing here the way we all thought they would. So what do you think you can offer them to change their mind? Well, certainly I would try, having been here for as long as I've been, and ironically I haven't even been back to the States since I made Aliyah. Having someone who can really walk the walk and talk the talk and help make the landing smooth and as smooth as possible. I'm not saying there won't be trouble, because I can't predict or guarantee that. But any change involves change, which can be good and can be bad. Right. But I do feel this is the Jewish people are meant to live in Israel, and I'm hoping that I'm doing my part to make that happen. Well, if you're the one who walks the walk and talks the talk, then thank you for offering your hand to our listeners, because that's what I think. My pleasure. Wonderful. All of you listening, you can contact Gilia, and you can contact me, Natalie, at Israel News Talk Radio. I'll put you in touch. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for listening. And we will be back after these messages. I think we have another segment. And thank you for listening to Returning Home.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
Welcome back to Returning Home. I'm your host, Natalie Sapinski. I want to talk to you a little bit about some words that I found very, very powerful to speak about the Jews still in exile, living in the diaspora. And you can find different expressions of this all over the place. I mean, someone sent me a New York Times article just yesterday of the Israeli baseball team that's going to the Olympics and how they went on a tour all around the United States first and how they're recruiting Jews from all over the world to be in the baseball team. And it was kind of, like, why does it matter? What do we have to prove? We don't need to prove anything. Why do we have to be in the Olympics at all? Why do we have to have a baseball team? I think it's a little bit silly. But the thing that upset me was that this person is like, and the way it's written is like bragging, like, oh, look, there are Jews that are athletes. Ooh, look, who would have thought? And someone recently said, I think it was Steve Miller had the new show, Lighten Up, how in the movie Airplane, someone asked for light reading material, and he was given a leaflet on Jewish athletes and like putting down Jews for not being athletes. Like, who cares? That is not like a big Jewish value. What's a Jewish value? To appreciate the world around you, to give tzedakah, to be a good person, do chesed, do good things, then live in Israel, okay, and grow a family. That's what's important, I'm not saying being healthy is important. Being healthy is super important, okay? But you don't have to, like, win medals and all this stuff. Being a showman isn't a Jewish value. So Zvi Fishman is this guy who lives in Shiloh. He is amazing. This guy writes so well. And he wrote, yes, there are problems in Israel. The Jewish cowboys from Texas and Nevada are telling me to write about the problems in Israel rather than trying to enlighten the Jews in the diaspora who adamantly prefer to hide out in Gentile countries. Okay, I will give the suggestion a try. First and foremost, the biggest problem in Israel is, what does he say? The tragic fact that the diasporans, Jews living there, refuse to come home to the chosen land in their ongoing rebellion against the Torah and Hashem. Let me explain in a very simple way why this is such a big problem. The physical and spiritual health of the Jewish people in Israel depends on the Shekhinah, translated as the divine presence. If 50% of the Jewish people live in the land of Israel, then 50% of the Shekhinah will dwell here in the land of Israel, giving forth 50% of its blessing. The other 50% will remain a vacuum, filled with all sorts of problems. The sages describe this phenomenon in reference to the pit into which Yosef was thrown, teaching us that a pit empty of water, Torah, will be filled with snakes and scorpions instead. If all the Jews would give up their adulterous love affairs with the Gentile lands and return home to Israel, then the Shekhinah power in Israel would radiate at 100%, blasting all problems away in its healing light and bringing tikkun Israel and to all the world. I think tikkun to Israel, meaning will bring healing, okay, to the people of Israel and all the world. Secondly, the problems we face in Israel are all temporary. I agree with this. They have no lasting substance whatsoever. And he's talking about all problems, okay? Political problems, health problems, problems with our enemies. It's true. As terrible as the problems may seem to be, they will all pass away in the redemption which Hashem has sworn through his prophets that he will bring to pass in our soon-to-be glorious future. The problems are like the scribblings a child makes on a board covered with a plastic sheet. When you lift the sheet, the scribblings disappear. I love that. It's so true. It's so true. In the meantime, we work to make things better, knowing that a happy ending will surely come, as the Almighty has declared. The patient is sick, but he will get better. Not so with the problems of Jewish life in the diaspora. There are problems there that are permanent and fatal. In the diaspora, the situation is terminal. The illness doesn't get better. The patient has no future. You do not recover in the diaspora. You die. This is its nature. The diaspora is a curse, not a blessing. Perhaps the moribund patient will survive another year, perhaps 5, maybe another 10. But the diaspora and the Chilul Hashem it embodies comes to an end. I thought that was great. And I know I was speaking earlier in the introduction about my recent, the book I read recently, and how the main character is suffering, living in a Gentile college and that Gentile world, and how it's new to him, and how I identified with it so strongly because I used to live in that world, and how living here in Israel, it's just, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like, wow, it's unbelievable. Okay, it's like flying. You are free here. You can do things here. There are no limits to your being, all right? Like, even if you're not religious, and I wasn't raised religious, okay? I'm not like this religious person, but everything here just, it's meant for Jews. It's meant for us. It's ours. And to be out there, you know, watching on the sidelines when you could be here on the field. Like, why would you do that? Why? There's no reason. There's no reason anymore. Israel is thriving. Israel works. Things here work. It's just so funny, you know, when you have a problem here, you don't like have to dress it up. You don't have to be so polite. You can actually like be crass and use funny expressions that you would never, ever use in America, you know, for fear of retribution or being, you know, sued or being hurt. You don't know who's a criminal, who isn't. Here, like, it doesn't work that way. People are very, very tough with each other. Israelis are very, you know, their language is strong. I hear my own children, the way they speak, not just to each other, but to their friends. I mean, they're so, like, not frank, but they're like rough. Their language, not just calling each other idiots, but like, you know, big idiots. You little piece of this, you piece of that. I mean, it's just so funny, and they don't flinch. You know, nothing hurts them. They're strong here. I just love that, and I guess it takes time, and you have to develop some thick skin. And if you come here, and if you are a sensitive person, you have to shed that a little bit, because it's tough here. But I say that with a big smile on my face, because I just love that. I just love that. And that's just like the day-to-day living. I'm not talking about spirituality. I'm not talking about something deep. I'm just talking about the day-to-day, which is, you know, most of what we do. You know, we are mothers, we are fathers, we are workers, we are children. We need to get things done, and you need to communicate with people. You need to get along, and you need to learn the culture, learn the language. And when I say language, I mean the culture. And when you come here with your behaviors and your what do I say, your niceties, you know, the North Americans do tend to change. They do tend to shed those niceties, for better or for worse. I think it's for worse in some sense, you know, like when that woman told me on the air a couple of weeks ago, when you're in line and somebody's shopping cart's in front of you, you should just push it away. You know, I think that's a little rough. I say just walk around it. But there are rough behaviors to maybe adopt or adapt, you know, learn and take as your own. And their behaviors, no, we don't want to be like that. We want to be civilized, you know. It's okay to bring a little piece of the diaspora, the good things here. It is good, but look, I could go on and on about that forever. It's been a good week, and everyone in the country is on vacation except for us, which happens every year. I've been hearing complaints about this the whole time we've been in Israel. Why don't we go anywhere? Why don't we go anywhere? Well, we don't. Okay, we don't have family here. Just deal, and it's fine. You know, we're at the pool. We're cooking together. We're sleeping in the tent. We're taking the dog on walks. We're baking cookies. We're making salads, and you know, we're each doing our thing, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. We only have 3 more weeks together like this, and then everyone goes on their own way, and it's going to be very, very quiet in my house. We are going to have almost an empty house. Only one child will be at home. Tzachi, my baby, he is going to be 12 in October during Sukkot, and he's going to be at home alone, and it's going to be very hard for him. It's going to be very hard for us. And I guess, that's what happens in life. You go through these different stages, and I was a young mommy, and now I'm an older mommy, and hopefully the next 10 years, I'll become a grandma, and all my kids will get married. That is my plan. I've told them all my plan and what I expect from them, and it needs to happen. So that's what we are working on. Of course, none of my boys have girlfriends. Tell me a thing. I'm constantly asking. And they, shut up, mommy, leave me alone. So we'll see. But that's the next stage. And I hope, they fulfill everything I've set out for them to fulfill. Okay, that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And have a great one. Bye-bye.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling for the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.